History is a story we tell with the pieces we have found, but some pieces do not fit. These are out-of-place artifacts, objects that defy everything we think we know about the timeline of human achievement. By the end of this journey, you will see the past not as a straight line, but as a landscape full of hidden peaks and forgotten valleys. We will examine a 2,000-year-old device considered the world's first computer and a medieval map that accurately depicts a continent not discovered for centuries. What does it mean when the physical evidence contradicts the official record? These silent witnesses challenge the foundations of our historical narrative, suggesting lost knowledge and unexpected connections between ancient worlds. How much of our past remains buried, waiting to tell its story? The discovery was made by sponge divers in the year 1900, who were seeking a different treasure entirely. Off the rugged coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, they found not just a sunken ship, but a time capsule from the ancient world. Among statues and pottery lay a corroded lump of bronze and wood, which at first seemed unremarkable. It was only decades later, after careful cleaning and study, that the true nature of this object began to emerge. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, a device of staggering complexity from a time we had long considered mechanically simple. Its intricate inner workings, a clockwork of at least 30 precise bronze gears, were housed in a wooden case no larger than a modern shoebox. To hold such a creation is to hold a profound mystery. It was not a weapon or a tool for war, but a calculator for the cosmos. By turning a hand crank, an ancient user could predict and planets, forecast lunar and solar eclipses, and even track the cycles of athletic games like the Olympics. This was a portable planetarium, an astronomical guide built over 2,000 years ago. The sophistication of its design is what truly staggers the imagination. Gears with triangular teeth were cut with a precision that would not be matched again until the great clockmaking traditions of the 14th century in Europe. For more than 1,000 years, the technological knowledge required to build such a device simply vanishes from the historical record. It stands as a solitary peak, a glimpse of a potential golden age of Greek mechanics that history forgot. The mechanism forces a difficult question. If this level of engineering was possible in the 1st century before the Common Era, what else was being dreamed and built? It suggests a lineage of technical thought, of master craftsmen and philosopher-scientists, whose works were likely not unique. Perhaps other mechanisms, even more complex, were created and then lost to time, their metal melted down or left to crumble on the ocean floor. The Antikythera Mechanism is not just an artifact, it is a challenge to our assumption of linear progress. It whispers that advanced knowledge can arise, flourish, and then be buried, waiting centuries to be understood once more. That solitary peak of mechanical genius was not alone. Far from the Mediterranean, in the lands of ancient Mesopotamia, another unassuming object sits in a museum case, its implications quietly revolutionary. This is the Baghdad Battery, a simple clay jar about the size of a man's fist, discovered in the 1930s near what was once the great city of Ctesiphon. It dates from the Parthian period, a time spanning roughly 250 years before the Common Era to 250 years after. The jar itself is unremarkable, but its contents tell a different story. Inside, a carefully rolled copper cylinder was fixed with asphalt, and within that cylinder rested an iron rod. When archaeologists first reconstructed it, they made a startling realization. If this vessel were filled with an acidic liquid, something as common as vinegar or fermented grape juice, a chemical reaction would occur between the two different metals and the electrolyte. The result would be a small but measurable electric current, around 1 volt. It is, in essence, a primitive galvanic cell. the immediate and tantalizing question is, of course, what was it for? The artifact offers no manual, no accompanying text to explain its purpose. This has led to a fascinating spectrum of theories. Some researchers propose it could have been used for electroplating, to deposit a thin layer of gold or silver onto other metal objects, a practice known in the region. Others suggest a possible medicinal application, where the mild tingling current was thought to have healing properties, a concept not unlike some early modern medical devices. A third possibility points toward religious or ceremonial use, perhaps to create a mysterious sensation during a ritual or to make a statue seem alive. The truth is, we may never know its exact intended function, but the profound implication remains unchanged. Someone, nearly 2,000 years ago, assembled these specific components in this specific way, creating a device that generates electricity. This was not a theoretical concept scribbled on a scroll. It was a practical, physical object. This moves the story from abstract possibility into the realm of hands-on experimentation. The Baghdad Battery suggests a culture, or at least a group of innovative artisans who are actively exploring the properties of materials and their interactions. They were observing cause and effect, tinkering with the natural world in a methodical way. It is a powerful reminder that the pursuit of knowledge is not a straight path with a single inventor at its end. It is often a scattered, fragmented process of trial and observation where insights can be gained, applied in a limited way, and then lost to time, only to be rediscovered centuries later under a different name. The battery does not rewrite history to show ancient people with light bulbs and power grids. Instead, it subtly rewrites our perception of their curiosity. It reveals a glimpse of practical science, of asking, what happens if, and building a jar to find out. This humble clay pot challenges the timeline not by being impossibly advanced, but by being plausibly, ingeniously early. It asks us to consider how many other simple experiments, how many other flashes of applied understanding have turned to dust without a trace, leaving our modern narrative of discovery feeling far more complete than it truly is. The principles of electricity and mechanics point toward a culture of hands-on experimentation, but what about the dream of flight? In the quiet of a tomb at Saqqara, Egypt, an artifact was found that seems to capture that very aspiration. Known as the Saqqara Bird, this small wooden object dates to around 200 years before the Common Era. At first glance, it is a simple carving, a child's toy, or perhaps a ceremonial offering shaped like a bird. But a closer look reveals details that are difficult to ignore. Its wings are not just stylized feathers, they are carefully tapered and angled, with a distinct aerodynamic curve known as an airfoil cross-section. More strikingly, it possesses a vertical tail fin, a feature no bird in nature has. This tail fin is not decorative. It is perfectly perpendicular to the wings, exactly the kind of stabilizer required for the flight of a fixed-wing aircraft. This is where the artifact transforms from a curiosity into a profound puzzle. The design appears optimized not for mimicking a living creature, but for achieving stable glide through the air. Some researchers who have studied its proportions have even constructed lightweight models based on its exact dimensions. When launched, these replicas demonstrate a surprising ability to fly for considerable distances with gentle adjustments. This practical test raises an unavoidable question. Was the Saqqara Bird merely a symbolic representation, or could it have been a model, a three-dimensional diagram of a larger concept? Mainstream archaeology often classifies it as a toy or a ritual object depicting a falcon, which is a reasonable interpretation given its cultural context. Yet the inclusion of that unique tail fin lingers as an anomaly. It suggests the carver was not just depicting an animal, but perhaps a principle of physics they had observed or conceptualized. One compelling theory is that ancient artisans, Through keen observation of seeds like the sycamore maple which spiral on winged pods, or through centuries of watching projectiles and sailing ships, had begun to intuitively understand the basic forces of lift and stability. The Saqqara bird could be a physical expression of that accumulated practical wisdom. It does not necessarily imply full-scale manned flight, but it powerfully hints at a sophisticated observation of aerodynamics codified in wood. This artifact invites us to re-examine ancient symbolism. When we see a bird-shaped object, we must ask, are we looking at a literal bird, or are we looking at the idea of flight itself, distilled into its most efficient form? The Saqqara bird challenges us to consider that the line between spiritual symbol and technical schematic might have been far thinner in the ancient mind than we assume. It is a silent testament to humanity's timeless gaze skyward, and a whisper that the principles of flight may have been understood, in some form, long before the Wright brothers ever left the ground. While the Saqqara bird hints at principles understood through observation, another artifact presents a mystery of pure information, a code with no key. Deep within the vaults of Yale University's Voynich Library rests a book that refuses to be read. This is the Voynich Manuscript, a dense codex of over 240 vellum pages, filled from edge to edge with graceful, looping characters of an alphabet seen nowhere else on Earth. Its text flows in neat paragraphs, accompanied by lavish, perplexing illustrations that are somehow both precise and utterly alien. The pages bloom with plants that have no botanical counterpart, their roots twisted and leaves unfurling in impossible arrangements. Circular diagrams chart celestial bodies in unfamiliar constellations, and intricate networks of pipes and vessels depict what might be biological or perhaps alchemical processes. There are even illustrations of small, nude female figures, depicted in a non-sensationalized, almost diagrammatic way, immersed in or connected to these strange green baths and tubes, suggesting a possible focus on natural philosophy or theories of the era concerning health and the human body. Since its modern rediscovery in the early 20th century, this book has withstood every attempt at decipherment. The world's foremost military cryptographers, who broke complex wartime codes, have turned their skills to its pages and walked away baffled. Advanced computer analysis, designed to detect patterns in language, confirms the text has a structure consistent with a real, natural language or a highly sophisticated constructed cipher, yet it matches no known tongue. Carbon dating places its creation firmly in the early 15th century, in Renaissance Europe, a time of burgeoning science and exploration. This context makes its content even more bewildering. The plants are not simply stylized versions of known species, they are wholly invented. The astronomy does not align with the star charts of the time. So what is it? The theories are as varied as they are contentious. Some believe it to be an elaborate, centuries-old hoax, crafted to deceive a wealthy patron. Yet the sheer consistency and volume of the text, created with such painstaking effort on expensive parchment, argues against a mere forgery with no purpose. Others propose it is a pharmacopoeia, a book of herbal remedies, written in a coded script to protect valuable medical knowledge from rivals or the church. The most tantalizing idea is that it represents a complete system of knowledge, perhaps from a lost culture or a lone, brilliant mind, documenting a unique understanding of botany, astronomy, and human biology that simply did not enter the mainstream historical record. The Voynich Manuscript is more than a curious old book. It is a locked door in the hallway of history. We can see the door, we can study its ornate carvings, but we have never found the handle. Its enduring mystery challenges a fundamental assumption that given enough time and technology, we can understand any artifact from our past. This manuscript defiantly resists that notion. It stands as a permanent reminder that the past may hold entire systems of thought, entire ways of seeing the world that are now utterly inaccessible to us. The silence of its pages is a profound statement, suggesting that some chapters of human knowledge are not just missing, but written in a language we may never learn to speak. While the Voynich Manuscript guards its secrets in silent text, another artifact from the same era speaks a visual language that is almost too clear to believe. In the year 1513, Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis compiled a world map of breathtaking scope, crafted on gazelle skin. This document is a stunning work of art and geography, but its true controversy lies not in its beauty, but in its impossible accuracy. The map shows the western coasts of Africa and Europe, the eastern shores of South America, and even a fragment of a southern landmass that bears a chilling resemblance to the coastline of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica. This is the central, profound anomaly. Antarctica was not officially sighted by European explorers until 1820, over 3 centuries after this map was drawn. Even more perplexing, the continent is depicted not under its current miles-thick ice sheet, but with topographic details of its bare coastline, mountains, and river systems, features that have been hidden under glacial ice for millions of years. The implication is staggering. The Piri Reis Map appears to show Antarctica as it was in a distant, ice-free geological epoch, information no human in the 16th century could have possessed through exploration. Admiral Reis himself provided notes on the map's margins, stating he had used 20 source maps, including some he described as dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. He specifically cited what he called maps from the 4 corners of the world and charts drawn by explorers who had seen these distant lands. This admission points toward a lost library of ancient cartography. Scholars who defend the map's potential authenticity suggest it is a compilation, a patchwork of far older knowledge. The theory proposes that advanced seafaring cultures, perhaps the Minoans or Phoenicians, or even a civilization whose name is lost to history, had achieved global navigation and mapped the planet during a warmer climatic period when Antarctica's coasts were exposed. These master charts were then copied, traded, and degraded over centuries, surviving as fragments in libraries like the one at Alexandria, only to be rediscovered and pieced together by a scholar like Reis. The map's precision regarding the Americas adds another layer of mystery. It shows the Andes Mountains and depicts the Amazon River with a double estuary, a geographical feature not recognized by European explorers until much later. How could an Ottoman admiral, years before Magellan's circumnavigation, possess such detailed knowledge of continents on the other side of the Atlantic? The Piri Reis Map does more than challenge the timeline of exploration. It upends the entire narrative. It suggests that the age of discovery was not an era of first contact, but rather an era of rediscovery. European explorers were not venturing into blank spaces on the map. They were sailing into territories that had already been charted, their coastlines known to some forgotten cartographic tradition. This artifact forces us to confront a humbling possibility. The great journeys of Da Gama and Columbus may not have been the pioneering first steps we celebrate, but the final steps in a much older, global story of human movement and knowledge, a story whose earlier chapters were erased by time, leaving only a single, cryptic map as a testament to a world that was once already known. The idea of a world already mapped is a profound shift in perspective. But what happens when a single object seems to define not just history, but geology itself? In the mountains of California in 1961, a fascinating discovery was made that would ignite a firestorm of speculation. 3 rock collectors were searching for geodes, those rough, spherical stones that hide beautiful crystal cavities within. They found one, and upon cutting it open, they expected to find the usual glittering quartz. Instead, they found something utterly bewildering. Inside the stone matrix was a cylindrical metal object with a porcelain-like insulator and a central metal rod. To anyone familiar with 20th century machinery, it looked unmistakably like a modern spark plug. The collectors named it the Coso Artifact. The immediate and sensational mystery was its apparent age. The geode, a formation that takes immense spans of time to develop, was estimated by some to be over 500,000 years old. Here was a stark physical contradiction, a piece of industrial technology sealed inside what should have been ancient stone. The story captured the public imagination, suggesting a scenario where advanced machinery existed in a distant prehistoric era, or perhaps even evidence of visitors from elsewhere. It was a classic out-of-place artifact narrative, seemingly perfect in its defiance. However, the true story of the Coso artifact is perhaps even more instructive than the initial mystery. Later, more rigorous investigations began to question the original claims. Independent analysis revealed that the crust surrounding the object was not a typical geode, but a hard clay concretion that can form much more quickly around a man-made object. Furthermore, experts in early automotive parts identified the internal component not as a mysterious artifact, but as a specific model of champion spark plug from the 1920s. The most likely explanation is a simple one. A spark plug from a piece of mining or farming equipment was lost in the desert, and over the decades, mineral-rich water cemented layers of hardpan around it, creating a convincing stone shell. The object wasn't ancient, it was just misplaced in a different kind of time, a geological shortcut that made 50 years look like 500,000. This artifact serves as a vital cautionary tale in the search for historical mysteries. It highlights two critical forces at play. First is the undeniable human eagerness to find evidence that shatters our established timelines, a desire to rewrite history with a single, spectacular find. This eagerness can sometimes lead us to accept extraordinary claims before exhausting ordinary explanations. Second, and just as important, is the absolute necessity of provenance, the documented story of where an object was found and its context. Without clear, verifiable provenance, even the most puzzling artifact can lose its power to challenge. The Coso artifact reminds us that the pursuit of lost history requires not just open-minded curiosity, but disciplined skepticism. It asks us to rigorously question both the objects we find and the stories we are so eager to believe. How many other modern items, from tools to toys, might be waiting in the earth, slowly being encased by nature, destined to confuse a future generation who will one day cut them open and wonder at the impossible object within? The line between a modern object and an ancient one can be blurred by the earth itself. In the summer of 1936, along the banks of Red Creek near London, Texas, a couple made a discovery while on a walk. They noticed an odd piece of rock with a piece of wood protruding from it. When they cracked the stone open, they found a hammer inside, a tool of unmistakably human design. This is the London hammer. The hammerhead is made of solid iron, and remarkably, the wooden handle is partially petrified, turned to stone. The immediate and profound conflict lies in the geology. The concretion of rock that encased the hammer was identified as originating from the Cretaceous period, a layer of stone formed over 100 million years ago. According to the established timeline of life on Earth, this was an era dominated by dinosaurs, millions of years before the earliest ancestors of modern humans are believed to have walked the planet. The artifact presents a stark physical paradox, a seemingly 19th century tool sealed inside a stone coffin from the Age of Giants. How could a human artifact exist in rock that predates humanity itself? Skeptics offer a compelling and more grounded explanation. They point to the process of concretion, where minerals like limestone can precipitate from water and cement around an object relatively quickly, especially in environments rich in dissolved minerals. In this view, the hammer is not ancient at all. It is a tool lost or discarded by a miner or settler in the 1800s, Over the decades, mineral-laden water slowly deposited layers of hard calcite around it, forming a solid rind that mimicked the appearance of much older stone. The petrification of the wooden handle while striking is also a process that can occur on a scale of centuries under the right chemical conditions, not necessarily eons. This explanation turns the artifact from a timeline-shattering mystery into a fascinating lesson in geochemistry. Yet, the London hammer endures as a staple of discussion for a crucial reason. It forces a direct and uncomfortable dialogue between rigid geological dating methods and singular, anomalous finds. If the concretion is genuinely Cretaceous, then our understanding of human history or geological processes is fundamentally flawed. If, however, the concretion formed with surprising speed, then the artifact challenges our assumptions about how quickly nature can work to fossilize and encase objects. It asks us to consider the limits of our methods. Can we always distinguish with absolute certainty between a 100-million-year-old rock and a 100-year-old concretion? The hammer, therefore, is less about proving an ancient advanced civilization and more about probing the boundaries of scientific interpretation. It represents the tension between the clean, orderly columns of the geological timescale and the messy, complicated, and often ambiguous reality of individual objects pulled from the ground. This simple tool reminds us that nature has a vast repertoire of processes, some of which can create illusions of deep time, reminding investigators to question not just the artifact, but the very stone that holds it. The tension between a modern tool and ancient stone speaks to the limits of our methods, but some stories challenge the very nature of evidence itself. In the mist-shrouded mountains on the border between China and Tibet, a tale emerged in the late 1930s that would become a cornerstone of modern alien folklore. According to the controversial account, an archaeological expedition led by a Professor Kai Pu-te discovered a series of caves high in the Bayan Karaula range. Inside, they did not find typical burial goods or tools. Instead, they found hundreds of strange stone discs, each about 9 inches in diameter, with a perfectly round hole in the center and a fine, double-grooved spiral inscription leading from the hole to the outer edge. The glyphs were reportedly microscopic, a form of writing so small it had to be examined under magnification. The local legend, as the story goes, spoke of small, slender beings with large heads who came from the clouds long ago. The translation of the discs, when finally accomplished years later, allegedly told a startling narrative. They were the recorded history of a people called the Dropa, who had crash-landed their spacecraft in the mountains thousands of years ago and could not repair it, becoming stranded on Earth. This account presents not just an archaeological anomaly, but a complete revision of human origins, suggesting contact with extraterrestrial visitors in our deep past. The sheer scale of the claim is what makes it so captivating and so divisive. If true, it would be the most significant discovery in human history, yet its evidence remains perpetually out of reach. Mainstream scholarship universally dismisses the Dropa Stones. No reputable museum holds a verified disc. The original expedition and Professor Kai Pu-te have proven untraceable in academic records, and the story first reached the West through sensationalist articles in the 1960s, not through peer-reviewed journals. Many experts argue the entire narrative is a complex hoax, while others suggest it may be a distorted retelling of a real discovery of ordinary Neolithic stone rings or by discs, common burial artifacts in the region, which were then woven into a modern science fiction fantasy. The stones themselves, if they ever existed as described, have vanished into the realm of anecdote. So why does this story persist with such power? The Dropa stones endure not as a physical challenge to archaeology, but as a cultural and psychological phenomenon. They represent the ultimate what if, a narrative that bypasses dry academic debate and speaks directly to our fascination with the cosmos and our place within it. This tale underscores how a mystery, when stripped of verifiable evidence, can evolve into a modern myth. It thrives in the space between fact and folklore, fueled by our desire for a universe that is stranger and more connected than our textbooks allow. The story challenges us less about ancient astronauts and more about our own frameworks for belief. How do we evaluate an extraordinary claim when its primary evidence is a compelling story passed through decades? It asks where we draw the line between open-minded inquiry and critical skepticism when faced with a narrative that promises to rewrite everything. The enduring legend of the Dropa Stones serves as a mirror, reflecting not ancient aliens, but our own timeless yearning for a hidden, more spectacular past. From the cosmic speculation of the Dropa Stones, we travel to a dusty museum in Peru, where a collection of rocks presents a different kind of narrative challenge. In the 1960s, a physician named Dr. Javier Cabrera began amassing a vast collection of andesite stones from the Ica region. These stones, often dark and river-smoothed, are not naturally remarkable. What makes them extraordinary are the intricate engravings that cover their surfaces. The images are startlingly clear, depicting scenes that seem to leap from a science fiction novel. There are human figures engaged in what looks like advanced surgery, including detailed heart transplants and cesarean sections. Other stones show people using telescopes to study the heavens, with accurate star charts and representations of comets. Most controversially of all, many stones feature human beings interacting with, riding, and even hunting creatures unmistakably recognizable as dinosaurs like Triceratops and Stegosaurus. Dr. Cabrera's interpretation was as bold as the images themselves. He proposed that these stones were the ancient library of a lost civilization, one that possessed profound medical and astronomical knowledge and lived alongside the great reptiles, a timeline that contradicts mainstream science by tens of millions of years. The stones, he claimed, were genuine artifacts buried and forgotten, telling the true story of a forgotten chapter in human history. The academic response was swift and definitive. Investigators found that local farmers readily admitted to creating the stones, using modern engraving tools, and then aging them with animal waste to give them a patina of antiquity. They were crafting these images to sell to tourists and collectors, often inspired by comic books, textbooks, and popular dinosaur magazines. For mainstream archaeology, the case was closed, a clear and admitted modern forgery. Yet, to dismiss the Ica stones entirely is to miss the deeper cultural puzzle they represent. Why would these specific, anachronistic images resonate enough to be painstakingly carved and sold? They tap into a powerful and enduring human fascination, a desire to see our own story intertwined with the most dramatic creatures of Earth's past, and to imagine ancestors who were not primitive, but technologically and intellectually advanced. The stones, whether ancient or modern, fulfill a narrative need. They provide a tangible, physical object for a compelling what-if scenario. This phenomenon challenges our understanding not of prehistory, but of pseudo-history, the creation and consumption of alternative pasts. The Ica stones represent a fascinating clash. On one side is scientific scrutiny, which demands verifiable evidence and proven provenance. On the other is a profound human longing for a past that is more mysterious, more dramatic, and more directly connected to the wonders of the natural world than the standard timeline allows. They are less an archaeological mystery and more a mirror reflecting our timeless appetite for stories that make the world feel stranger and more wondrous. In this light, the stones ask a subtle but important question. When we look at an artifact that promises to rewrite everything, are we seeking historical truth, or are we seeking a myth that speaks to our deepest curiosities? The desire to reshape the landscape into a canvas of meaning finds its ultimate expression not in stones, but in the very earth itself. High on the arid plains of southern Peru, a civilization left a message so vast it could only be read by the sky. These are the Nazca Lines, a sprawling network of geoglyphs etched into the desert floor over 1,000 years ago. Created by the careful removal of the dark, sun-baked surface stones to reveal the lighter soil beneath, these lines form immense drawings of hummingbirds, spiders, monkeys, and geometric shapes. Some stretch for over 600 feet, their forms so perfectly proportioned that they remain crisp and clear centuries later. The sheer scale is the first mystery. From ground level, you see only shallow trenches and paths winding through the gravel. The full, breathtaking image of a colossal condor or a twisting killer whale only resolves when viewed from a significant height, a perspective the Nazca people themselves seemingly could not achieve. This fundamental disconnect between creation and perception is what places these lines firmly among history's great puzzles. How did they design and execute such precise, monumental art without the ability to see their own work from above? The most accepted explanation points to sophisticated, low-tech ingenuity. Archaeologists suggest the Nazca could have used a system of scaled-down models and a grid of stakes and ropes to transfer the designs, enlarging them section by section across the desert. This method demonstrates a profound understanding of geometry and spatial planning, a communal effort requiring generations of coordinated labor. Their purpose, however, remains an open question. Many researchers see a deep connection to water, the most precious resource in the desert. The lines may have been ceremonial pathways for rituals to summon life-giving rain from the mountains, with the animal figures representing spirits or constellations linked to the hydrological cycle. Others propose they functioned as a giant astronomical calendar, their alignments marking solstices and equinoxes to guide agricultural cycles. The more speculative theories, born from their aerial visibility, imagine them as signals or even landing guides for beings from the sky. While this captures the imagination, it overlooks the powerful human impulse to create meaning on a grand scale. The Nazca Lines challenge us to expand our definition of technology. They are not gears or batteries, but a social technology, a testament to what a unified culture can achieve with simple tools, shared belief, and a vision that transcends a single lifetime. They transformed their entire environment into a sacred space, a temple without walls where the gods, or perhaps their own ancestors looking down, could witness their devotion. In doing so, they left a permanent mark not on a handheld object, but on the face of the planet itself, a reminder that some messages are meant for the horizon and beyond. A single coin can carry the weight of an entire ocean crossing. In the soft soil of a Native American shell midden at the Goddard site in Maine, archaeologists in 1957 uncovered a small, corroded silver disc. After careful cleaning, its identity became clear. This was a Norse penny, a coin minted in Norway between the years 1065 and 1080 of the Common Era, a full 4 centuries before Christopher Columbus set sail. It was found not in a museum's Viking collection, but amidst the everyday remains of a thriving Penobscot Bay settlement, a place of tools, pottery, and bones from daily meals. This tiny artifact, now known as the Maine Penny, presents a quiet but profound question. How did a coin from medieval Scandinavia find its way into a Native American community on the far side of the Atlantic? The established narrative of European contact places the first Norse footprints at El Ants Ox Meadows in Newfoundland, a settlement dated to around the year 1000. This site proves the Vikings had the capability to reach North America, but their presence is understood to have been brief and limited. The Maine Penny, discovered far to the south, suggests those contacts may have been wider, or at least their echoes traveled further than the archaeological record has fully shown. One compelling theory is that this coin did not arrive in the pocket of a Norse explorer, but through the vast, intricate trade networks that already connected indigenous peoples across the continent. It could have been passed from hand to hand over generations, moving south from a chance encounter in the north, treasured not for its monetary value but as a curiosity, a piece of exotic material perhaps worn as a pendant. In this light, the coin is less about a Viking village in Maine and more about the dynamic, continent-spanning exchange systems that existed long before European arrival. It hints at a pre-Columbian world already in motion, where objects and ideas could travel extraordinary distances. The Maine Penny does not rewrite history with a saga of conquest, but it subtly complicates the story of isolation. It challenges the clean, schoolbook tale of a new world discovered in 1492 by presenting evidence of sporadic, earlier Atlantic crossings that briefly brushed against the eastern shores of the Americas. This small piece of silver is a whisper of possibility, a tangible clue that the ocean was not an absolute barrier, but a highway occasionally traveled, leaving behind the faintest of traces for us to ponder. The whispers of a wider world are not confined to Norse coins. In the highlands of central Mexico, an excavation at the Toltec site of Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca revealed a burial offering that seemed to speak with a distinctly foreign accent. The artifact was a small terracotta head, discovered in a sealed archaeological layer that dated firmly to before the Spanish conquest. Its style, however, was utterly alien to Mesoamerican art. This was not the stylized visage of a local deity or a ruler. Instead, it bore the unmistakable hallmarks of classical Roman sculpture from around the 2nd century of the Common Era. The figure wears a distinctive hat known as a pileus, common in Roman depictions of freed slaves or travelers, and the facial features, with its carefully modeled beard and hair, follow the naturalistic Greco-Roman tradition completely unknown in the pre-Columbian Americas. The immediate and profound question was how such an object arrived in a tomb in Mexico over 1,000 years before Columbus. The discovery ignited a fierce debate about transoceanic contact. Could a Roman vessel, perhaps blown off course in a storm, have somehow crossed the Atlantic and made landfall in the New World, leaving behind this single, cryptic artifact as evidence of a fleeting, unrecorded encounter? The idea challenges the long-held assumption of complete isolation between the hemispheres, suggesting instead a rare but possible thread of connection across the vast ocean. Skeptics offer more conservative explanations. They point to the possibility of a post-colonial intrusion, where the head, perhaps brought by a Spanish colonist who collected antiquities, accidentally found its way into an older archaeological layer during excavation. Others suggest the resemblance, while striking, could be a remarkable coincidence of artistic style, an independent convergence of form. Yet, the head's context in a sealed, pre-Hispanic burial makes the intrusion theory difficult to fully prove, and the coincidence argument feels strained given the specificity of the Roman artistic conventions it displays. The Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca Head does not demand we rewrite history to include Roman legions in Mexico. It presents a quieter, more plausible mystery. It asks us to consider the unpredictable nature of human movement across the seas. A single ship, whether Roman, Phoenician, or belonging to another seafaring culture, could have undertaken an accidental or intentional voyage of extraordinary length. Such a journey, if it occurred, would have been a one-way trip into the unknown, leaving no empire behind, only a single, traded object that eventually found its way into the ground as a valued curiosity. This artifact challenges the concept of isolation not as an absolute barrier, but as a permeable membrane, occasionally pierced by the daring, the lost, or the fortunate. It reframes the ancient world as a place of potential, where oceans were not walls but spaces of mystery that might, on rare occasion, be bridged. The silent terracotta face invites us to wonder not about grand colonization, but about the lone traveler, the chance meeting, and the strange object that passes from one hand to another, carrying with it a story of origins that would be forgotten for 1,000 years. Buried deep in the sands of time alongside the bones of giants, a small metal object waited to tell a confounding story, In 1974, on the banks of the Mureș River in Aiud, Romania, construction workers unearthed something unexpected. Roughly 35 feet down, they uncovered the ancient remains of Mastodon, a prehistoric elephant-like creature that vanished from the earth thousands of years ago. Nestled among these colossal bones was a comparatively tiny artifact, a wedge-shaped piece of metal, heavily corroded and caked in a thick layer of sand. Initially dismissed as perhaps a stone tool, it was cleaned and examined, revealing a surface of dull, dark gray metal. Laboratory analysis delivered a result that made no sense at all. The object was composed of an alloy primarily of aluminum, a metal that changed the modern world but simply should not exist in such an ancient setting. Pure aluminum does not occur naturally in the Earth's crust. It is locked tightly inside bauxite ore and requires a complex industrial process involving extremely high temperatures and electrolysis to extract, a technology pioneered in the 1880s. To find a manufactured aluminum alloy in a layer with mastodon bones, which date to a time when humans were, at best, using stone tools, created an instant and profound paradox. The Aiud Wedge, as it became known, was an artifact violently out of its time. The immediate theories were as dramatic as the finding itself. Could it be evidence of a lost, advanced civilization with knowledge of metallurgy that rivaled the Industrial Revolution? Some looked skyward, suggesting it might be a piece of landing gear or a tool from a much more distant visitor. The artifact seemed to be a perfect physical rebuke to our linear understanding of technological progress. However, as with many such discoveries, the full story required peeling back more layers than just the river sand. Later, more sober examinations offered a different, more grounded perspective. Experts in industrial machinery noted the wedge's shape and composition were strikingly similar to a modern excavator tooth, the kind of hardened metal attachment used on the bucket of heavy digging equipment. The alloy itself, while aluminum-based, was a specific type used for durability in such machinery. This presented a plausible, if mundane, explanation. The construction site where it was found was, by definition, a place where excavators had been working. It is entirely possible that a tooth from such a machine broke off during earlier digging, fell into a pit, and became naturally buried and mixed with much older geological layers, creating an illusion of deep antiquity. The initial discovery report, which placed it definitively with the mastodon bones, has been questioned, highlighting the critical role of precise archaeological documentation. The Aiud Wedge stands as a powerful lesson in context. It underscores the razor-thin line between a world-changing anomaly and a simple case of modern contamination. The object itself is real, its composition is strange for its alleged context, but the story of its burial may be far less mysterious than it first appeared. This artifact challenges us not to believe in ancient astronauts, but to rigorously question the provenance of every extraordinary find. It asks a crucial question for any investigator, whether professional or amateur. When we encounter the impossible, should our first instinct be to rewrite history, or to first double-check the records of where and how the object was truly found? The wedge reminds us that the ground can play tricks, mixing epochs together, and that the most thrilling mystery is sometimes just a matter of something being in the wrong place. A story carved in stone can become a monument to identity itself. In the dense woods of Minnesota in 1898, a Swedish immigrant farmer named Olof Öhman made a discovery that would ignite a century of controversy. While clearing his land, he unearthed a large, flat slab of greywacke stone tangled in the roots of an aspen tree. The stone itself was unremarkable, but its surface was covered in strange, angular markings. These were runes, the ancient alphabet of the Norse. The inscription, once translated, told a harrowing tale. It spoke of a party of 8 Goths or Swedes and 22 Norwegians on an exploration journey from Vinland far to the west. The text dated their camp to the year 1362 and ended with a grim note stating that 10 men were red with blood and dead, a possible reference to a violent conflict. This was the Kensington Runestone, and its message was explosive. If genuine, it meant that Norse explorers had ventured deep into the heart of North America, over a century after the Vikings abandoned their settlement at El Anse-aux Meadows and a full 130 years before Columbus. It suggested a continued, daring presence in the interior of a continent they were never supposed to have seen. The academic world reacted with deep skepticism from the start. Linguists pointed out glaring anomalies in the runic text. The runes used were a mixture of styles from different centuries and regions, some of which scholars argued would not have been used together in the 14th century. The language itself contained modern Swedish elements and grammatical constructions that seemed out of place. For most experts, the evidence pointed conclusively to a clever 19th century creation, a hoax carved by a literate Scandinavian immigrant, perhaps Olof Oman himself or someone he knew, inspired by the rising national romanticism and pride in Viking heritage that was sweeping through immigrant communities at the time. The stone became a symbol of a different kind of conflict, one between established academic authority and a powerful, populist desire for a different origin story. For many Scandinavian Americans in the upper Midwest, the runestone was not a forgery, it was a validation. It was physical proof that their ancestors had not just arrived as poor farmers, but as intrepid explorers who had shaped the land long before others. It connected them directly to a glorious, adventurous past, transforming the Minnesota wilderness into a new chapter of the Viking saga. This emotional investment made the artifact impervious to purely academic dismissal. The Kensington Runestone thus challenges history in a unique way. Its greatest impact is not on the timeline of exploration, but on our understanding of how history is made and claimed. It lives in a space between fact and folklore, a testament to the profound human need for roots and recognition. The stone asks a question that goes beyond runes and carbon dating. When does an artifact stop being an object of archaeology and start being a relic of faith? It reminds us that the past is not just a series of events to be uncovered, but a narrative to be embraced, and sometimes a story we choose to believe because it tells us who we are. The desire to carve identity into stone finds an echo in another form of ancient expression, one that illuminates the walls of a temple instead of a forest clearing. Deep within the crypts of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera in Egypt, a stone relief carved over 2,000 years ago presents an image that seems to leap from the modern world. It shows a large, bulbous object, elongated and rounded at one end, resting on a stand. Inside this object is a wavy line that strikingly resembles a filament. A cable or tube runs from its base, connecting to a box held by a kneeling figure, while another figure gestures toward the scene. To a contemporary eye, the interpretation feels instantaneous. It looks for all the world like a depiction of an electric light bulb, complete with its power source and an operator. This is the relief often called the Dendera Light, and its visual similarity to modern technology is undeniable and jarring. It sparks an immediate, thrilling question. Could this be evidence that the ancient Egyptians possessed, or at least understood, the principle of electric lighting? The mainstream Egyptological explanation, however, is rooted not in physics but in mythology. Scholars identify the scene as a symbolic representation of a creation myth. The bulbous shape is not a glass enclosure, but a lotus flower, a powerful symbol of rebirth and creation emerging from the primordial waters. The serpent inside is the god Harsomptus, representing the life force and divine energy coming into being. The cable is seen as a lotus stem, and the box may be a divine womb or a container for this sacred power. The entire tableau is a spiritual allegory carved in stone, a visual hymn to the moment of cosmic genesis. This creates a fascinating intellectual standoff. On one side is a literal technological interpretation that sees knowledge of electricity encoded in iconography. On the other is a symbolic, religious interpretation that sees a profound spiritual metaphor. The modern interpretation challenges us to reconsider the boundaries of ancient symbolic art. Could a culture encode practical observations about the natural world within its religious imagery? Is it possible that witnessing phenomena like electric discharge from certain fish in the Nile or the glow of certain heated materials inspired a symbolic representation that we now misread as literal engineering? The relief does not demand we believe in ancient power grids. Instead, it offers a masterclass in how our own technological frame of reference shapes what we see. We live in a world illuminated by bulbs, so we see a bulb. An ancient Egyptian lived in a world explained by gods springing from lotus flowers, so they saw a divine birth. The Dendera Light is ultimately a lesson in perspective. It asks us to hold two possibilities in mind at once. The first is that ancient artisans were brilliant observers who might have stylized natural electrical phenomena into their sacred art. The second, and perhaps more profound, is that our drive to find our own technology in the past can sometimes blind us to the unique and sophisticated way other cultures chose to explain their universe. This carved stone challenges not the timeline of invention, but the very lens through which we attempt to decode the messages left behind by those who came before us. The human drive to shape stone into meaning takes a different, more enigmatic form in the jungles of Costa Rica. Here, scattered across the Diquís Delta and on the Isla del Coño, lie hundreds of stone spheres. They range from the size of a bowling ball to colossal orbs over 2 meters in diameter, weighing several tons, crafted by the Diquís culture between the years 300 and 1500 of the Common Era. These spheres are not just rocks, they are monuments of geometric perfection. Their surfaces are astonishingly smooth, their shapes so precisely spherical that modern measurements reveal only the tiniest of deviations. This precision is the first layer of the mystery. How did a society using stone hammers and abrasives achieve such flawless symmetry on such a massive scale, without the mathematical instruments or metal tools we associate with such work? The process was undoubtedly a monumental communal effort, likely involving careful pecking with harder stones, grinding with sand, and an immense investment of time and labor for each one. But the technique alone does not explain the why. The purpose of the spheres vanished with the culture that made them, leaving behind a silent, stony landscape that invites endless speculation. Were they astronomical markers aligned to track the sun or stars for agricultural or ceremonial calendars? Some spheres have been found in alignments, though many were moved by later agriculture, obscuring their original positions. Could they have been symbols of power or status, with the largest spheres denoting the most important families or chiefs, their perfection reflecting cosmic order and authority? Another theory suggests they were territorial markers, defining sacred spaces or boundaries between communities. The truth is, no single theory fully satisfies, and this absence of a clear answer is what makes them so compelling. They challenge our perception of pre-Columbian Central American societies, not by showing advanced technology in the modern sense, but by demonstrating an extraordinary mastery of material, a profound understanding of geometry, and a level of social organization capable of sustaining such a long-term, focused artistic endeavor. The spheres are a testament to a shared vision, a cultural project that spanned generations. They ask us to look beyond practical function and consider the power of an idea. What unified belief or communal goal was so strong that it motivated people to spend years, perhaps lifetimes, perfecting a single stone sphere? In their silent, perfect roundness, they represent a dialogue between human intention and the enduring earth, a conversation where the question has been beautifully carved, but the answer has been lost to the jungle. Far from the perfect silence of the stone spheres, a humble ceramic bowl whispers of a connection that should be impossible. On the high, windswept plains of Bolivia, near the shores of Lake Titicaca, a farmer unearthed an object that would become one of the most contentious artifacts in the world. Known as the Fuente Magna bowl, it appears at first glance to be a simple, wide-mouthed vessel of ancient local make. Its true mystery is etched into its very surface. The bowl is covered in intricate, deliberate markings, a complex script that does not belong to any known writing system of the pre-Columbian Americas. To some researchers, these symbols bear a startling resemblance to two of the world's oldest scripts from the opposite side of the globe. One set of characters looks eerily like Proto-Sumerian cuneiform, the wedge-shaped writing of ancient Mesopotamia. Intermixed with these are other symbols that echo the still undeciphered script of the Indus Valley civilization, which flourished in what is now Pakistan and India. The implications of this are staggering, bordering on the fantastical. If the inscriptions are genuine and ancient, they suggest a cultural exchange of unimaginable scale around 5,000 years ago. It would mean that seafarers or travelers from the cradle of civilization in the Middle East, or perhaps the sophisticated cities of the Indus Valley, somehow crossed vast oceans and reached the high Andes, leaving behind this single piece of pottery as a testament to an encounter lost to time. This idea directly challenges the foundational model of independent cultural development, proposing instead a connected ancient world where ideas and writing could travel across hemispheres. The academic response has been one of profound and almost universal skepticism. Mainstream archaeologists point out that the bowl was not discovered in a controlled, documented excavation, making its provenance unclear. Many experts argue the markings are not writing at all, but rather natural abrasions, tool marks from the potter's wheel, or later additions. Some suggest it could be an elaborate modern forgery, created to fuel sensational theories. The bowl sits in a difficult space, lacking the archaeological context that would allow for definitive dating or verification. Yet, for those who study it, the patterns feel too ordered, too intentional to be mere accident. The Fuente Magna bowl represents the ultimate litmus test for how we handle anomalies. It pushes the idea of ancient transoceanic contact to its absolute limit, asking us to consider a world where the great early civilizations were not isolated experiments, but potentially nodes in a network we can scarcely comprehend. It forces a difficult question about the nature of evidence itself. When an object contradicts every established model so completely, does that mean the models are wrong, or does it mean we must subject the object to the most ruthless scrutiny imaginable? The bowl does not provide answers. Instead, it holds up a mirror to our own paradigms, reflecting our deep-seated assumptions about the isolation of the ancient world and our reluctance to rewrite the map of human prehistory based on a single, unproven piece of pottery. Its silent script is a riddle that may never be solved, a permanent invitation to wonder just how small the ancient world might really have been. Even the deepest coal seams, formed over eons of immense pressure, can yield surprises that seem to defy those very eons. In the year 1885, inside the Wolfsegg coal mine in Austria, miners split open a large block of tertiary period coal, a layer laid down millions of years in the past. What tumbled out was no fossil but a solid, heavy cube of metal. This was the Wolfsegg Iron, a near-perfect parallelepiped with a deep groove running around its center, its surfaces smooth and its edges slightly rounded. To the workers who first held it, its appearance was unnervingly artificial, looking for all the world like a piece of carefully crafted machinery or a tool. The coal that encased it was unquestionably ancient, belonging to a time long before the first cities, before even the earliest recognized human ancestors. So what was this manufactured-looking object doing inside it? The immediate theories were as dramatic as the setting. Some saw it as proof of a lost, advanced civilization that walked the earth alongside prehistoric giants. Others, looking even further, wondered if it was a relic left by visitors from beyond our world, a piece of technology dropped in a primordial swamp and slowly buried over the ages. The artifact seemed to be a physical impossibility, a stark anachronism that mocked the established timeline of human development. Scientific analysis, however, gradually peeled back the layers of mystery. Detailed examination revealed the cube was made of cast iron, a material that is indeed human-made, requiring a blast furnace to produce. The groove around its middle was consistent with a mold line, a mark left from industrial casting. The most plausible explanation began to take shape. The cube was almost certainly a piece of 19th-century mining equipment, perhaps a counterweight or a fragment of a broken tool from an earlier phase of excavation. It had somehow fallen or been discarded into a crevice, where mineral-rich water and coal dust slowly cemented new layers of coal-like material around it, a process called concretion that can happen with surprising speed in the right chemical environment. Over just a few decades, this natural casting process created a perfect, convincing shell of hard coal, making a modern object appear impossibly ancient. The Wolfsegg Iron, therefore, stands as a classic case of a pseudo-out-of-place artifact. Its initial mystery was not a lie, but a misinterpretation born from the deceptive power of geological processes. It challenges us not to believe in ancient astronauts, but to understand the subtle tricks that time and chemistry can play. This humble cube exemplifies a crucial principle in the search for lost history. The most compelling mysteries often force us to investigate two timelines simultaneously: the age of the object itself and the age of the material that surrounds it. When those two stories violently disagree, we must ask which one we have misread. The cube's enduring legacy is its lesson in patience and perspective. It reminds us that the Earth is not just a keeper of artifacts, but an active participant, capable of creating its own convincing illusions, wrapping the modern in a cloak of deep time and presenting us with a puzzle that asks more about our methods than about the distant past. The deceptive power of geology to mimic human craftsmanship finds perhaps its most perfect example not in a cube of iron, but in a tiny, grooved sphere. In the mineral-rich deposits of South Africa, miners have occasionally unearthed strange metallic objects from deep rock layers dated to the Precambrian era, a staggering 2.8 billion years in the past. These are the so-called grooved spheres or Klerksdorp spheres. They are small, often no larger than a walnut, and composed of a nickel-steel alloy called pyrite. What makes them extraordinary are their features. Many are nearly perfect spheres, and some bear 2 or 3 fine, parallel grooves running neatly around their equator, as if machined by a lathe. Their appearance is so deliberately symmetrical, so uncannily manufactured, that they seem to defy their own impossible age. 2.8 billion years ago, Earth was a vastly different planet. The atmosphere was toxic to life as we know it, the continents were barren rock, and the most complex organisms were simple, single-celled microbes. The idea that anything resembling a precision-crafted metal object could exist from this epoch is on its face a profound challenge to everything we understand about the history of our world and the development of intelligence. The spheres naturally ignite the most dramatic theories. Could they be evidence of a lost, non-human civilization that rose and fell in the deep mists of geological time, leaving only these enigmatic spheres as a testament? Or might they point to an even more speculative possibility: artifacts from visitors to a young Earth, deliberately placed or accidentally left behind? The allure of these narratives is powerful, offering a glimpse into a past more mysterious and grand than the slow, patient story told by the rocks themselves. Yet the scientific explanation, while less sensational, is no less wondrous. Geologists identify these objects as pyrite concretions, natural formations that occur under specific chemical conditions. As minerals precipitate from water in sedimentary rock, they can sometimes form around a central nucleus growing in layers. The process is not perfectly understood, but under just the right conditions of pressure, chemistry, and crystallization, these layers can build with remarkable symmetry. The parallel grooves, experts suggest, could be the result of crystalline growth patterns or the impression of surrounding rock layers that have since weathered away. In essence, nature, through a billion-year-long alchemy of chemistry and physics, can sometimes produce forms of startling regularity. This creates a fascinating intellectual crossroads. The grooved spheres challenge us not merely to identify an object, but to examine our own interpretive instincts. When we see parallel lines and perfect curves, our minds are wired to see design, intention, a maker. This is a fundamental human bias born from our own experience as toolmakers. The spheres force us to confront the limits of that bias. They ask a critical question: where do we draw the line between the astonishing artistry of natural processes and the signature of an intelligent hand? These tiny orbs from the dawn of time serve as a profound, humbling lesson. They remind us that our planet is an immense and patient sculptor, capable of creating forms that mirror our own ingenuity without any guiding consciousness at all. To study them is to engage in a dialogue between two kinds of wonder: the wonder of a potentially lost history, and the even deeper wonder of a universe that can, through simple rules repeated over eons, create the illusion of a message meant just for us. The grooved spheres remind us that nature can mimic design, but on the windswept plains of Rapa Nui, the design is unmistakably human. The Easter Island moai are not misplaced in geography, but they stand as profound monuments to a mystery of human capability. Nearly 900 of these colossal stone figures dot the island's coastline, their stern, elongated faces gazing eternally inland. Carved from compressed volcanic ash, the average moai weighs around 14 tons, with the largest unfinished statue left in the quarry estimated at a staggering 270 tons. For a small, isolated Polynesian society with a population that likely never exceeded 15,000, the sheer scale of this endeavor pushes the boundaries of what we believe is possible with pre-industrial technology. How did they achieve it? The question is not about who, but about how. The prevailing academic theory paints a picture of ingenious communal effort. The statues were likely carved directly from the rock face of the Ronoroku quarry using hand-held basalt picks, a process requiring generations of skilled artisans. The real puzzle is transportation. How do you move a multi-ton block of stone, some as tall as a 5-story building, across miles of rugged terrain to ceremonial platforms called ahu along the coast? The most accepted hypothesis involves a system of log rollers, ropes fashioned from island vegetation, and a vast coordinated workforce. Teams would slowly rock a statue forward onto a lubricated path of logs, pulling it upright in a careful, walking motion. This method, while physically demanding, is demonstrably feasible with enough people and patience. Yet, the scale remains staggering. It represents an immense investment of time, food, and social organization for a society living on an ecological edge. This monumental effort challenges our assumptions about societal drivers. What compelled this community to dedicate such a massive portion of its collective energy and resources to this single, awe-inspiring project? The answer likely lies in a powerful combination of ancestral veneration and social cohesion. The moai are believed to represent deified ancestors, their placement on coastal ahu serving as a protective, watchful presence over the living community. Creating them was not just an artistic or engineering feat, it was a sacred act that reinforced identity, status, and connection to the land and the past. The story of the Moai, therefore, is not merely a technical puzzle. It is a testament to the incredible things human communities can achieve when united by a shared, powerful belief. It asks us to reconsider the limits of cooperation and what a society, even a small one with limited natural resources, can choose to build when its vision is grand enough. The silent giants of Rapa Nui stand not as artifacts out of place, but as permanent questions carved in stone, challenging us to understand the profound motivations that can move mountains, or at the very least, make them walk. The drive to depict life cycles finds a controversial expression in a small, dark disk. Known as the genetic disk, this palm-sized artifact is said to have been found in Colombia. It is carved from a hard, black stone called lyddite, and its surface is covered with intricate, precise carvings. The images are not of gods or animals, but of biological processes. One side clearly shows a sperm cell penetrating an egg, the moment of fertilization. Surrounding this are detailed depictions of various stages of fetal development, from a simple cluster of cells to a recognizable human form curled in the womb. The accuracy is startling, mirroring illustrations from a modern medical textbook far more than any known pre-Columbian artwork. This visual precision is the heart of the mystery and the controversy. How could an ancient culture possess such a detailed, microscopic understanding of human reproduction, a process invisible to the naked eye? The implication is profound, suggesting a knowledge of embryology that archaeology does not attribute to any society of that time and place. The artifact, if genuine, would force a complete re-evaluation of the observational and scientific capabilities of its creators. It points toward a culture that may have dedicated generations to the intense study of life itself, perhaps through methods or philosophical traditions now lost to us. However, the genetic disk exists in a shadowland of authenticity. The vast majority of academic experts regard it with deep skepticism, primarily due to its lack of a clear, documented archaeological provenance. Without a verified excavation record, its origin story cannot be confirmed. Many specialists believe the disk is a modern creation, a clever forgery crafted in the 20th century using contemporary biological diagrams as a reference. The stone itself, while ancient, could have been carved recently. This perspective sees the disk not as a window into lost knowledge, but as a reflection of our own modern fascination with origins, projected onto an object made to look old. This conflict creates a fascinating standoff between two ways of seeing. For those who argue for its potential authenticity, the disk is a physical challenge, asking how we explain such an anomaly, if not by admitting a gap in our historical record. For skeptics, it is a cautionary tale about the human desire to find our own advanced understanding mirrored in the distant past. The disk ultimately pushes a more philosophical boundary, the boundary of what we believe was knowable. It asks whether extreme, dedicated observation over centuries could have yielded insights we assume require microscopes, or if some knowledge might have been gained through channels we no longer recognize or understand. Regardless of its true age, the genetic disk serves as a powerful symbol. It represents our enduring attempt to understand the very miracle of our own beginnings, and the tantalizing possibility that someone, long ago, may have come closer to that mystery than we ever thought possible. The desire to capture the essence of flight is a thread woven through countless cultures. In the river valleys of Colombia, the master goldsmiths of the Quimbaya culture left behind a collection of small, intricate artifacts that have become a modern Rorschach test for the ancient world. Crafted between 1000 and 1500 of the Common Era, these objects are made of tumbaga, a versatile alloy of gold and copper. To the archaeologists who study them, they are beautiful examples of pre-Columbian artistry, stylized representations of the natural world. They are classified as zoomorphic figures, likely depicting birds, insects like dragonflies, or even stylized fish. their forms abstracted into elegant, flowing lines that emphasize symbolic meaning over literal realism. This interpretation is solidly grounded in the cultural context, where animal symbolism was deeply connected to spirituality and the environment. Yet, when a modern viewer looks at these particular objects, something extraordinary happens. The mind does not see a bird or a bug. It sees something entirely familiar from the 20th century. The artifacts possess a distinct fuselage, a rounded cockpit-like bulge, delta-shaped wings set back on the body, and even what appear to be vertical tail stabilizers. The silhouette is uncanny, resembling nothing so much as a modern jet aircraft or a space shuttle. This visual echo is so strong, so immediate, that it creates a powerful cognitive dissonance. How can an object created a millennium ago look so perfectly like a piece of technology invented only decades ago? This is the central puzzle of the Quimbaya artifacts, often called the Quimbaya airplanes. They stand at the crossroads of two completely different ways of seeing. One view is anthropological, seeing the artistic conventions of a specific people expressing their cosmology through natural forms. The other view is technological, asking if the form could be inspired by something more than just a living creature. The speculation they ignite is not necessarily about ancient pilots, but about ancient observation. Could these shapes represent an artist's attempt to capture the most aerodynamic forms found in nature, distilled to their most efficient essence? A diving bird, a streamlined fish, or a darting insect all possess shapes optimized by millions of years of evolution for moving swiftly through a fluid, whether air or water. A master artisan keenly observing these forms might abstract them into a design that, by pure coincidence, mirrors the principles later used by aeronautical engineers. The artifacts challenge us to examine our own interpretive lens. When we see a jet, we are projecting our own technological worldview onto the past. But could the reverse also be true in some small way? Could the ancient artist's pursuit of an elegant, symbolic form have inadvertently stumbled upon a shape that holds a deeper, universal truth about lift and stability? These small gold objects are not blueprints, but they are profound questions cast in metal. They ask us to consider the line between inspired symbolism and intuitive physics, and whether the human mind, in its quest to represent the wonder of the natural world, can sometimes arrive at a universal form that speaks across the centuries, waiting for a future generation to give it a new name and send it soaring into the sky. The principles of physics that allow a small gold artifact to suggest flight meet their ultimate test not in delicate metal, but in the crushing, unimaginable weight of stone. In the ancient quarry at Baalbek, Lebanon, a single block of limestone rests forever unfinished. Known locally as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, its name speaks to a legend of fertility, but its reality speaks to a staggering feat of ambition. This is not merely a large stone, it is the largest known worked monolith from the ancient world, an estimated 1,200 tons of solid rock. To grasp that scale, imagine a fully loaded jumbo jet. Now imagine that weight not in complex machinery, but in a single, carved piece of the earth itself, left in the bed where it was born. The surrounding temple complex of Baalbek, with its colossal Roman foundations, is a marvel in its own right, built upon even older megalithic walls. But this stone, still partially attached to the bedrock, exists in a category of its own. It was clearly quarried, its sides precisely cut and smoothed, ready for a journey that never began. And this is where the true mystery ignites. How did the builders intend to move it, even with the known Roman technologies of cranes, pulleys, and vast teams of laborers and animals? Moving a block of this mass across miles of terrain seems to border on the impossible. The friction alone, the sheer physics of initiating movement for an object weighing over 2 million pounds, presents an engineering puzzle that modern experts still debate fiercely. The stone's existence challenges the conventional narrative of ancient capability, not by suggesting lost power tools, but by revealing a breathtaking scale of intention. It points to a confidence, a school of engineering thought that believed such a task was within reach. Were the builders using a technology we have since forgotten, perhaps a sophisticated system of counterweights and leverage that went beyond simple logs and ropes? Or does the stone represent a limit case, an ambition that finally overreached even their extraordinary skills, leaving it as a permanent testament to the outer edge of what they dared to attempt? This monolith does more than defy gravity. It defies our imagination of the past. It forces us to reconsider the social and logistical power of ancient societies. To commit to such a project required more than just engineers. It required a civilization capable of organizing and sustaining thousands of workers, feeding them, housing them, and motivating them for a project that might span generations. The stone is therefore a dual monument. It is a physical object of profound mystery, and it is a shadow cast by the immense social machinery that created it. It asks us to look beyond the how and to wonder at the why. What temple, what gateway, what statement of power was destined to be crowned by a stone of such incomprehensible weight? The answer lies buried with the architects, but the question remains, carved into the very earth, challenging us to expand our understanding of what the ancient world believed it could build. The colossal stones of Baalbek speak of a civilization's ambition to reshape the world on a monumental scale. But what of the figures meant to inhabit those sacred spaces? In the hot, fertile plains where civilization first took root, a different kind of artifact offers a more intimate, yet equally puzzling, glimpse into the ancient mind. Excavations at sites belonging to the Ubaid culture of Mesopotamia, dating back over 7,000 years, have uncovered a series of distinctive clay figurines. These are not the typical fertility goddesses or animal totems found in other early societies. Instead, they depict humanoid forms with unmistakably reptilian characteristics. Their heads are elongated with slitted, almond-shaped eyes and pronounced lizard-like features. Some even appear to have a scaly texture on their skin. Perhaps most intriguing of all, many of these figures are posed in a seated position, cradling what looks like an infant against their shoulder, a posture of care that feels universally human. This juxtaposition is what creates the enduring mystery. We see a gesture of nurturing, of family, combined with a physical form that is distinctly other. To the modern eye, conditioned by decades of speculative fiction, the interpretation leaps toward the dramatic, suggesting ancient encounters with non-human, perhaps even extraterrestrial beings. The figures are often colloquially called the Ubaid Lizardmen, a name that captures their eerie, anomalous presence in the archaeological record. Mainstream scholarship, however, provides a more grounded, yet no less fascinating interpretation. Archaeologists see these figurines as powerful examples of early religious or symbolic art. They may represent deities associated with water, fertility, and the primal forces of nature, concepts deeply vital to a society dependent on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The reptilian features could symbolize wisdom, regeneration, or a connection to the earth itself. Alternatively, they might depict priests or shamans wearing elaborate ceremonial masks and costumes during rituals, transforming themselves into otherworldly beings to commune with the divine. This practice of ritual transformation is well documented in cultures across the globe and throughout history. The figurines, then, are not portraits of literal beings, but rather sculpted prayers, three-dimensional symbols of a belief system that viewed the boundary between human, animal, and spirit as fluid and permeable. Their true challenge lies not in proving ancient aliens, but in probing the very origins of human creativity and spiritual expression. They force us to ask why this specific form, What deep-seated concept or observed truth about the world was best expressed through the image of a reptilian humanoid nurturing a child? These clay figures represent one of humanity's earliest attempts to give shape to the unseen, to manifest the forces that governed their lives in a tangible form they could hold in their hands. They stand at the dawn of iconography, a testament to the human impulse to explain, to worship, and to connect through art. In their silent, watchful faces, we see not visitors from another star, but the profound and mysterious birth of symbolism itself, a moment when the human imagination first began to sculpt the gods it would pray to for millennia to come. The story of the Wolfsegg Iron finds a direct parallel in another discovery from the same era and region. In the late 19th century, within the coal seams of Salzburg, Austria, miners uncovered a strange metallic object. This was the Salzburg Cube, a heavy, geometric piece of iron that, like its cousin, seemed perfectly shaped and out of place within the ancient coal. Its surfaces were smooth, its edges defined, and to the workers who first held it, the conclusion felt obvious. This was no random lump of ore. It appeared to be a manufactured object, a tool or component deliberately crafted by human hands. The excitement was immediate and understandable. Here was another potential key, another piece of evidence that could unlock a door to a forgotten chapter of history, suggesting human activity in a time frame that made no sense. The artifact seemed to whisper of advanced knowledge buried in the deep past, a tantalizing echo of a world that contradicted the textbooks. This initial leap from discovery to dramatic interpretation is a powerful and common human impulse. We are pattern-seeking creatures, and when we find an object that looks designed, our minds rush to fill in the story with the most extraordinary narrative possible. The cube became a focal point for speculation, a physical emblem of the unknown. Yet, the true journey of an artifact like this does not end with its unearthing, it begins there. The critical next step is the often less glamorous but utterly essential process of scientific analysis. When experts subjected the Salzburg Cube to rigorous examination, a different story emerged. Detailed study revealed it was not a product of a forge or a workshop. Instead, it was identified as a natural iron nodule, a formation that occurs under specific geological conditions. Over immense spans of time, minerals can precipitate from solutions and crystallize in ways that create surprisingly regular shapes. The cube's form was not the work of an ancient smith, but the patient, algorithmic artistry of chemistry and pressure. Its story, therefore, transforms from a mystery about lost civilizations into a profound lesson about the natural world's ability to mimic human design. This narrative arc, from thrilling discovery to grounded explanation, is a recurring theme in the study of out-of-place artifacts. It highlights the delicate balance we must maintain between open-minded curiosity and disciplined skepticism. The initial excitement is not a mistake. It is the fuel for inquiry, but that curiosity must then be channeled into methodical investigation. The Salzburg Cube's legacy is not one of rewriting history, but of illuminating the scientific process itself. It underscores that the path from a puzzling object in the ground to an understood part of our past is a journey that requires patience, expertise, and a willingness to follow the evidence wherever it leads, even if that path leads away from the most spectacular conclusion. In doing so, it reminds us that sometimes the greatest wonder lies not in a manufactured mystery, but in the natural world's own, often overlooked, capacity for creating order. Beneath the clear, blue waters off the coast of Yonaguni Island, Japan, a landscape of stone descends into the deep. Discovered in the 1980s, the Yonaguni Monument is a colossal, terraced structure that rises from the seafloor like a submerged fortress. Its features are startlingly geometric, with vast, flat platforms, sharp, 90-degree angles, and what appear to be staircases ascending its sides. To the human eye, trained to recognize intention, the formation looks undeniably architectural. It is a place where the ocean itself seems to have built a city of stone. For those who argue for its artificial origins, the monument is a ghost, a remnant of a civilization swallowed by the sea at the end of the last ice age, when rising waters transformed coastlines and drowned entire worlds. The possibility is haunting, a tangible piece of a lost chapter in human prehistory, a Pacific Atlantis waiting to be acknowledged. Yet the sea is also the greatest sculptor on Earth. Geologists who have studied the site point to the powerful, patient forces at work. The monument is carved from a single bedrock of sandstone, a material particularly susceptible to the relentless scouring of tidal currents and the fracturing caused by seismic activity in this tectonically volatile region. The straight lines and flat plains, they argue, are the result of natural jointing and shearing, where the rock splits along its own inherent weaknesses. The stair-like terraces could be the product of differential erosion, where softer layers wear away faster than harder ones, creating a stepped profile. In this view, the monument is not a ruin but a remarkable natural sculpture, a masterpiece created by the impersonal, grinding tools of physics and time over thousands of years. This site presents a profound challenge that goes far beyond a single underwater formation. It forces a direct confrontation with one of the most difficult questions in archaeology and human history. How do we tell the difference between a human creation and a work of nature, especially after millennia of submersion and erosion? Our criteria for identifying artificial structures are based on land-based sites, where tools, marks, mortar, and associated artifacts like pottery or tools provide clear evidence. Underwater, these clues are often washed away or buried. The Yonaguni Monument exists in a gray area, a liminal space where every feature can be interpreted in two completely different ways. The straight wall could be a quarry cut or a tectonic fracture. The round depression could be a ceremonial pool or a pothole carved by swirling pebbles. This ambiguity is the true heart of the mystery. The debate pushes us to refine our very methods of seeing. It asks us to consider the limits of pareidolia, our brain's powerful tendency to find familiar patterns, especially faces and structures in random shapes. When we look at the monument, are we seeing a city because it is one, or because our minds are irresistibly drawn to impose order on the chaos of nature? At the same time, it cautions us against dismissing the extraordinary capabilities of ancient peoples. If it were artificial, it would represent a megalithic achievement of staggering scale, suggesting a coastal culture with sophisticated stone-working traditions that vanished beneath the waves, leaving no other trace. This possibility, however slim, compels us to keep looking, to develop new technologies for underwater archaeology that can detect subtler signs of human modification. Ultimately, the Yonaguni Monument may never surrender a definitive answer. It stands as a permanent question mark on the ocean floor, a lesson in humility. It teaches us that the boundary between the natural and the artificial can be beautifully, frustratingly blurred. Whether it is a sunken city or a sandstone masterpiece, its true power lies in its ability to captivate our imagination and challenge our assumptions, reminding us that some of Earth's greatest wonders are those that keep their secrets, holding them in the silent, patient dark of the deep sea. The debate over a city beneath the sea centers on interpreting patterns in stone, but another artifact presents a pattern woven into fabric, one that has captivated both the faithful and the scientific mind for generations. This is the Shroud of Turin, a length of linen cloth bearing the faint, haunting imprint of a man who appears to have suffered crucifixion. While venerated by many as a sacred relic, its journey through the halls of science has produced a mystery that remains stubbornly unresolved, a puzzle where every answer seems to generate new and deeper questions. The central, defining feature is the image itself. It is not a painting, not a stain in any conventional sense. It is a subtle, sepia-toned coloration on the very topmost fibers of the cloth, with no pigment, no brushstrokes, and no directionality. Forensic analysis reveals astonishing detail, corresponding to the wounds described in accounts of crucifixion, from scourge marks across the back to a wound in the side, and even what appears to be blood flows consistent with a crown of thorns. The image possesses a three-dimensional quality, as if the intensity of the coloration correlates precisely with the distance between the cloth and a body, a property no known medieval artist could have conceived, let alone executed. This scientific intrigue led to a pivotal moment in the late 1980s, when small samples of the shroud were subjected to radiocarbon dating by 3 independent laboratories. The results converged on a date range between the years 1260 and 1390 of the Common Era. For many, this was a conclusive answer, placing the shroud's origin firmly in the medieval period, likely as a remarkably crafted devotional object. Yet for others, the mystery only deepened. Questions were raised about the samples themselves. Could they have been taken from a section of the cloth that was expertly rewoven after a medieval fire, contaminating the dating? Could chemical residues from centuries of handling and exposure have skewed the carbon signature? The debate over the dating process became a microcosm of the entire enigma, highlighting the tension between a single scientific method and a unique, singular object with a complex history. Beyond the question of age lies the even more profound question of how. If the image is not a painting, what natural or chemical process could have created such a precise, photographic negative centuries before the invention of photography? Theories have ranged from the mundane to the extraordinary. Some suggest a form of early photography using a camera obscura and silver compounds, though no evidence of such technology exists from that era. Others propose a natural chemical reaction, perhaps from gases emitted by a body interacting with spices or oils on the linen. Yet, no experiment has perfectly replicated all the shroud's unique characteristics, particularly its three-dimensional information content, and the fact that the image resides only on the surface fibrils without saturation. The Shroud of Turin, therefore, occupies a unique and challenging space. It is an artifact that sits at the precise intersection of faith, art history, and forensic science. It challenges historical methods by presenting an object of veneration that demands material proof. It challenges scientific methods by presenting a phenomenon that resists definitive replication and explanation. For some, it is a powerful symbol, a focal point for devotion regardless of its origin. For others, it is the ultimate cold case, a piece of physical evidence waiting for a new technology or insight to finally unlock its secret. Its enduring power lies not in providing answers, but in perpetually asking a question that speaks to our deepest curiosities about history, belief, and the elusive line where the physical world meets the stories we tell about our past. A haunting visage stares out from a block of clear quartz, its features smooth and enigmatic. This is the world of the crystal skulls, objects that have become icons of the mysterious and the arcane. The most famous among them, the Mitchell-Hedges skull, is a masterpiece of carving with a detachable jaw and a polish so perfect it seems to glow from within. For decades, stories swirled around these artifacts. They were said to be ancient, perhaps the work of Maya or Aztec artisans, imbued with psychic power, capable of foretelling the future, or even relics from the lost continent of Atlantis. Their flawless craftsmanship, created from a single piece of notoriously hard crystal, suggested a technology lost to time, a ghost from a past that defied explanation. The skulls became more than artifacts, they became characters in a modern legend, symbols of a hidden history waiting to be unlocked. The allure was irresistible, blending the grandeur of ancient civilizations with the tantalizing promise of supernatural energy. This narrative, however, began to fracture under the cold, clear light of scientific scrutiny. When experts finally subjected the skulls to rigorous examination, using powerful microscopes and modern analysis, a different story emerged. The telltale marks of 19th-century jewelers' tools were found etched into the crystal. The polishing techniques matched industrial methods from that era, not pre-Columbian handwork. The geological source of the quartz itself, in some cases, was traced to regions outside of Mesoamerica. The evidence pointed conclusively to a more recent origin. The most likely scenario is that these exquisite objects were crafted in European workshops during the 1800s, a time of intense fascination with the exotic antiquities of the New World, and sold to collectors eager for a tangible piece of its perceived mystery. They were, in essence, magnificent forgeries, yet to dismiss the crystal skulls as mere fakes is to miss their profound cultural significance. Their true power lies not in their antiquity, but in their story. They are artifacts of a different kind, relics of our own collective imagination. They reveal a deep and enduring human desire to find objects that bridge the gap between the known world and the realm of wonder. In an age of increasing scientific rationalism, the skulls offered a physical touchstone for the unexplained, a beautiful, solid crystal that seemed to hold secrets just beyond our grasp. Their journey from workshop curios to icons of alternative archaeology challenges the history of discovery itself. It shows how a compelling narrative, once attached to a physical object, can take on a life of its own, often outpacing the slower, more meticulous work of academic verification. The skulls created a modern myth so potent that, for many, it became more real than the documented past. This phenomenon asks a difficult question about our relationship with history. Do we seek the past as it truly was, complex and often mundane, or do we seek a past that reflects our hopes for magic and lost wisdom? The crystal skulls stand as a mirror, reflecting not ancient Mesoamerican priests, but our own timeless longing for a world filled with elegant, silent enigmas waiting to share their secrets with those who believe. On the rugged sandstone walls of a quiet valley in New South Wales, a message from a pharaoh seems to have been left in the sun. These are the Gosford Glyphs, a collection of over 250 carvings spread across two rock faces near the town of Gosford. To the untrained eye, they appear strikingly Egyptian, depicting familiar symbols like the Ankh, the Eye of Horus, and figures of what look like ancient gods and royalty. The narrative they seem to tell is one of epic, tragic journey. Some carvings appear to recount a story of two princes from a distant land, their father a great king who sailed across perilous seas. The tale speaks of a brother lost to a crocodile, of mourning, and of a final, fatal snake bite in this strange new world. If authentic, these carvings would be nothing short of revolutionary, rewriting the story of human migration to suggest ancient Egyptians not only built ocean-worthy vessels, but successfully navigated the vast Pacific to reach the Australian continent thousands of years before European contact. The implications would force a complete re-evaluation of ancient maritime technology and global cultural exchange. The academic response, however, has been swift, unanimous, and definitive. Professional Egyptologists who have examined the site dismiss the glyphs entirely as a modern hoax. Their reasoning is meticulous and rooted in the details of the script itself. They point out that the hieroglyphs are a chaotic mix of styles from vastly different Egyptian periods, jumbled together in a way no ancient scribe would ever commit. The grammar is nonsensical, the sentence structure backwards, and some symbols are carved upside down or mirrored, mistakes akin to randomly mixing letters from medieval English, modern text slang, and the Cyrillic alphabet to form a sentence. Furthermore, certain symbols used are now known to be artistic conventions from much later dynasties, anachronisms that would be impossible for an ancient traveler to have known. The consensus is clear. The Gosford Glyphs are not a relic of the past, but a creation of the 20th century, likely the work of local individuals with an interest in Egyptology and a creative impulse. Yet, to simply label them a hoax and move on is to miss the deeper cultural phenomenon they represent. Despite the scholarly verdict, the glyphs have taken on a powerful life of their own in popular culture. They feature in documentaries, are the subject of books, and draw visitors to the site who come to see this tangible, physical challenge to the history books. They persist because they fulfill a compelling narrative need. They give physical form to a tantalizing what-if. They speak to a desire to connect the isolated story of ancient Australia to the grand, familiar narratives of world history, to imagine a past where the great civilizations were not separate but interconnected. In this way, the glyphs become more than failed forgeries. They become modern folklore carved in stone. They demonstrate how quickly a story, once physically inscribed onto the landscape, can become its own kind of truth, creating a new layer of local legend for future generations to discover and debate. The site challenges us not about ancient sailors, but about how history is made and claimed. It asks why we are so eager to find these connections, and what it means when a community or a culture adopts an artifact as its own, weaving it into its identity regardless of its provenance. The silent sandstone wall in Australia stands as a monument to this very human process, a reminder that the past is not just something we uncover, but something we are continually, and sometimes quite literally, in the act of writing. Sonar paints a picture in sound, a ghostly map of the unseen world below. In the year 2011, a team of Swedish treasure hunters was scanning the floor of the Baltic Sea when their sonar returned an image that defied easy explanation. Resting on the seabed was a massive, circular object roughly 60 meters wide, its shape unnervingly geometric. It appeared as a perfect disk with a long, straight tail extending behind it, and on its surface, what looked like stair-like steps leading to a dark opening. The image, dubbed the Baltic Sea Anomaly, instantly electrified the public imagination. Here was a form that looked engineered, not born of the random chaos of nature. It sat on the seafloor like a crashed saucer from a science fiction film, a silent, colossal mystery waiting in the dark. The immediate and dramatic theories were predictable. Was this the remains of an unidentified craft, a relic from another world that had fallen to Earth in some distant era and been covered by the slow silt of millennia? Others looked to more recent history, suggesting it could be a top-secret World War II anti-submarine device or a lost piece of naval hardware, its true purpose still classified. The anomaly's location in a region of heavy wartime activity gave this idea a certain weight. Yet, for the scientific community, the most likely explanation lay not in engineering but in geology. Experts in glacial and seabed formations pointed out that the last ice age sculpted this region with immense power. They proposed the anomaly is a rare but entirely natural glacial deposit, a giant moraine of rock and debris pushed and shaped by a retreating glacier thousands of years ago. The straight tail could be a glacial flute carved by ice dragging along the bedrock, while the disc-like shape might be a chance accumulation. Subsequent dives to the site reported more ambiguous findings. Sonar can create sharp, clean lines from rough textures, and the darkness and sediment of the deep can play tricks on cameras and human perception. What looked like stairs might be a trick of the light on eroded stone. The dark opening could be a shadow in a crevice. The Baltic Sea Anomaly, therefore, represents a distinctly modern kind of out-of-place artifact. It was not dug from the earth by hand, but revealed by technology, a digital echo from the abyss. Its primary existence is as data, a collection of pixels that we must then interpret. This shifts the challenge from analyzing physical material to interpreting ambiguous shapes in an environment fundamentally alien to us. The deep sea is our planet's final frontier, a place of crushing pressure and perpetual night, where our intuition about what is natural and what is artificial is least reliable. The anomaly's enduring debate is a powerful lesson in the psychology of discovery. It shows how our minds, when presented with an ambiguous form in an unexplored place, rush to fill the void with the most culturally resonant narrative available. In the 20th and 21st centuries, that narrative is often technological or extraterrestrial. The object forces us to confront a critical question. In an age where we can map the ocean floor with incredible precision, are we any better at understanding what we are truly seeing? It reminds us that every new tool for exploration brings with it a new wave of mysteries, not because the past is hiding more, but because our capacity to find strange shapes in the darkness has grown exponentially. The anomaly may never be conclusively identified, and perhaps that is its purpose. It serves as a modern monolith, a Rorschach test on the seabed, challenging not our history books, but our ongoing struggle to distinguish the signal of intelligence from the profound and beautiful noise of the natural world. Each of these objects, from the intricate gears of the Antikythera Mechanism to the silent giants of Easter Island, presents its own unique riddle. Yet when we step back and view them not as isolated curiosities but as a collective phenomenon, a deeper and more profound challenge emerges. These artifacts, these persistent outliers, do more than just puzzle archaeologists. They hold up a mirror to the entire enterprise of writing history itself. They force a fundamental re-examination of our methods, our deeply held assumptions, and the unsettling possibility that the record we have so carefully assembled is not just incomplete, but may be missing entire chapters. The journey through these mysteries reveals a spectrum of explanations. Some, like the Ica Stones or the Gosford Glyphs, are almost certainly modern creations, born from human ingenuity, humor, or a desire for connection to a more dramatic past. Others, like the Coso Artifact or the Wolfsegg Iron, are likely cases of mistaken context, where natural processes or modern contamination have created a powerful illusion of deep time. These cases are not failures, they are essential lessons. They teach us the critical importance of provenance, of rigorous skepticism, and of understanding that the Earth itself is an artist capable of crafting convincing forgeries. But then there are the others, the artifacts that withstand this scrutiny, the ones that remain stubbornly, genuinely perplexing. The Antikythera Mechanism was real, and its sophistication is undeniable. The Piri Reis Map exists, and its depiction of an ice-free Antarctica is a cartographic fact that begs for an explanation. These are not hoaxes or mistakes, they are data points that refuse to fit neatly on the graph. It is this third category that delivers the most significant blow to our conventional narratives. These objects challenge more than a date in a textbook or the origin of a particular technology. They challenge the very philosophy of history we have inherited. Is the human story a simple, linear progression from primitive to advanced, a steady climb up a mountain of progress where each generation builds directly upon the last? Or is it something far more complex, a rugged landscape of isolated peaks and deep, forgotten valleys? Could there be eras where knowledge flourished in specific ways, only to be lost to war, disaster, or simple forgetting, its secrets buried for centuries until a chance discovery forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew? This is the humbling truth these artifacts compel us to face. Our understanding of the past is not a finished monument, but a living, breathing work in progress, constantly under renovation as new evidence comes to light. It is a story shaped by the fragments that have survived the relentless sieve of time, and equally by the stories we, in the present, are intellectually and emotionally prepared to consider. These silent witnesses from lost workshops and sunken ships do not give us easy answers. Instead, they ask difficult, beautiful questions. They invite us to embrace a history that is less certain but infinitely more interesting, a past that retains its capacity to surprise us. They remind us that curiosity, paired with careful scrutiny, is not a threat to knowledge, but the very engine that drives it forward, always searching for the next piece of the puzzle, waiting in the earth or the deep sea or the pages of a strange manuscript to tell us a part of the story we have not yet heard. These 30 threads, from ancient gears to a modern sonar echo, weave a tapestry not of answers but of profound and persistent questions. They stand as monuments to human curiosity, each one a quiet rebellion against a history that feels too settled, too complete. Their greatest challenge is not to the facts themselves but to our relationship with those facts. They do not demand we burn the history books, but they insist we read them with a more critical, more imaginative eye. They ask us to hold space for the possibility that our timeline is not a straight, unbroken line, but a story with missing pages, unexpected footnotes, and perhaps even a few chapters we have yet to find. For every artifact like the Ica Stones, which teaches us the power of modern myth-making, there is an Antikythera Mechanism, a real and breathtaking object that proves genius can arise, be forgotten, and lie dormant for 1,000 years. This duality is the core of the mystery. It requires a balance, a willingness to dream alongside a commitment to evidence, to let wonder and skepticism walk hand in hand. The enduring power of these objects lies less in proving ancient astronauts or lost super-civilizations, and more in the fundamental questions they force us to confront. How much of human achievement is built upon foundations we have since buried? How many chance encounters, brilliant experiments, or daring voyages have left no trace but a single, baffling clue? They remind us that knowledge is fragile, that entire schools of thought can vanish into the silence between one era and the next. This perspective transforms history from a static record into a living, breathing investigation. It becomes a collective detective story where every new discovery, whether in a desert or a database, has the potential to shift our understanding. The past is not a locked vault, but a conversation, one we are still having. We invite you to continue this conversation. Look deeper into the stories that intrigued you most, weigh the evidence for yourself, and share your perspectives below. Your curiosity is the next essential tool in this ongoing exploration. If you found this journey through the unexplained compelling, consider subscribing for more voyages to the edges of our understanding. The final lesson of these 30 artifacts may be the most important one of all. The story of us is still being written, and the next discovery, the next secret waiting to be revealed, could be just beneath the next turn of the soil or the next sweep of the sonar tomorrow.